Welcome to the Independent Artist Podcast, sponsored by the National Association of Independent Artists.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. I'm Will Armstrong, and I'm a mixed media artist.
I'm Douglas Sigworth, glassblower. Join our conversations with professional working artists.
Good morning, sir. I was looking forward to seeing you in your hospital bed.
Yeah.
It's like a Joseph Conrad novel. Got a little Heart of Darkness going on. How's it going?
Come on, don't start wasting the goodies before we start the show.
I'm recording, bitch.
Oh, you are?
It is on. I got a hot mic.
You're good then. Hey, welcome to the show, everyone. We are recording here in my recovery suite at the Sigworth residence.
Nice. So the Sigworth Ranch. Nice to see you, sir. And you seem like you're in good spirits.
I am in good spirits. I'm feeling fantastic. After being isolated for 1 week, seeing your face is really brightening up my day, let's just say.
Oh, Jesus. You are having a hard time.
I'm desperate, right?
I'm hang on. I'm going to go call Renee. I'm not sure you're doing as well as you say. Oh, man. No, I know how you're feeling, but God, I just had a big bite of biscotti. I feel like I've got sand in my mouth. Nice to be back here on the podcast. We've had a couple of hiccups along the way, which have put us in the mood to record It's Sweeps Week. It's a very special episode.
It's Thanksgiving week, so we're giving the listeners what they want.
Really? Because I texted my wife, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna listen to this episode."
Okay, well, you can have a break, Susan. You can have a break.
We've got no guest. She was actually in a pretty good mood too. I just talked to her. I was like, man, maybe I should just press record on this. She'd be a good guest. I'll just do that.
She would make a good guest, but she made it clear early on that this was your project, and she didn't want to be on air.
No, yeah, leave me alone. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to. Well, she hears about it, but good Lord, she doesn't want to be on. We'll see. Maybe we'll change your mind along the way.
Right. Well, I think you and I have both talked about the fact that the year of doing this, we'll be talking to people in our booth or just socially, and it'll almost feel like we should hit record because it's almost like an impromptu podcast recording.
Well, when I talk to you, if I see you on the street, typically we'll get into this banter, and all of a sudden I feel like
You're on?
I am recording it. Like you and I don't really even hang out, honestly. Besides, doing this, like I didn't really know you before this project.
Yeah.
So when I do see you on the street, I'm like,
he runs the other way. No, I'm just kidding.
I kind of do, right? I want to save it. I'm like, save it, dude. No, I don't want to. We're gonna ruin some good shit.
Yeah, that's right.
Let's get into I do want to press record, and that's just the way it ends up being.
We do have this kind of natural flow that is on air quality. It is. It's fun.
Sometimes.
Or not sometimes. Okay, Bert.
All right. Oh, hi-ho. I can't imitate Bert. I can imitate Ernie. Hi-ho, Bert. No.
Yes, you can.
I always thought it was Kermit the Frog.
I've seen you imitate Bert a few times, not intentionally, but...
Yeah, that's our new logo. Go ahead and sue us, Sesame Street. Sesame Street doesn't have the money anymore.
Come for us. Come
at me, bro.
Come at me. Well, aside from the surgery, which back to that, I want to give a big shout out and thanks for all the people who've sent me messages and good old fashioned cards. Man, I forgot how nice it is to get cards in the mail. That's been a treat.
Nice.
The outpouring of love, the grapefruits from Florida. You know who I'm talking about there, Mickey Cunningham. Thank you so much.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
Mickey's always been so supportive of the show.
Totally. Yeah. So it's been a great week. A lot of people are sharing the love and it's helped me because going into it, it was like I was this tornado of stress and I've got to get all this stuff done before I can't do anything. And I guess what I've come to realize this week is I'm applying the kind of type A artist archetype towards this extreme healing I need to do.
That's healthy of you. And I was gonna jump in there and say, you know what getting cards in the mail means, Douglas?
What does it mean?
It means you're friends with a lot of old people.
I hate to tell you, Will, but we are old people.
Whatever. You're old people.
Don't be dissing on the card writers out there.
No, I'm sure you won't.
It's very meaningful. It means somebody had to actually go out, buy a card, write your name on it, say something thoughtful, and drop it in the mail. I mean, there's a lot more effort than just But the other stuff is good too. I'm not saying that the texts aren't good. I loved all of it.
If I send cards, I like to send the super inappropriate ones. Like send, like sorry for the passing of your child or like the really immature Valentine's cards for birthdays and things like
just
that.
Just the absolute, like us, completely ironic and off the wall.
Or just make it look like I've just put zero thought into the selection.
That's as to be expected.
Or put $1 in there. You're like, sorry about the passing of your mom, and then add $5. My grandmother used to send cards that were like that. She not like that, but she'd send you the $2 and be just like random, like go buy a milkshake.
There you go.
That's
hilarious.
Anyway,
well, the type A thing I'm talking about is, so you know how in our businesses we have to be like super in control of like coming up with like a new series or stuff we want to make, and we plan it, we execute it, and I'm trying to use that same kind of thought process towards kind of backing off from doing anything so that I can let the healing begin. Because after I saw the work that the surgeon did on my ankle.
That work that surgeon done? Would you get it done in the South?
What the surgeon did with those long screws and
put some drywall screws
in there. Bones. It's like, man, I don't want to mess any of that shit up. So
not at all. I cut a tendon in my finger when I was in college. I was bartending at the Olive Garden, and we could talk about some of the history and what you've learned from different jobs you've had. But I was bartending. Learned to bartend when I was 21 at the Olive Garden.
Nice.
And I was washing dishes, and I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, and Dave Matthews Band was a great place to go. He had a weekly gig Wednesday night at this little club before he'd hit. This is talking about being old.
Okay.
But he was playing this Wednesday night gig, which was a great place to go and meet girls. It was like 9-to-1 girls to guys. And so we would love to go in there. We didn't give a rip about Dave Matthews Band, but it was a great place to just go and dance and have a good time.
Right.
But I was hurrying and I was bartending. And, you know, Olive Garden is a great place to bartend too and learn it, because it's not actually a bar. You know, you learn how to do whatever.
You could put out some wrong mixed drinks and no one's going to even notice or care. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. If you didn't know how to make it at the Olive Garden, it was just rum and fruit juice. It's like, can you make me a 6 on the wall? It's like, yeah, sure thing.
Rum and fruit juice.
What color do you remember it being? Like, well, that's how we make it here, honey. All right. So anyway, I was hurrying and I broke a carafe in one of those, those brush wheel things, and I broke one of those in my hand and cut a tendon. And I did that. I hurried. I was 21 and had done that to myself, and so I've got nerve damage in that because I did not listen to the doctor and
so that stuck with you.
Take care of it. Yeah, I used
it?
my hand as a club, and I jammed the pencils down the cast in order to draw. I was in art school at the time, so just. I don't know. We didn't care. So don't do that. Don't be like me.
I won't. Well, I remember back when Renee was pregnant and the doctors or something we had read was talking about how...
That totally means you had sex.
Nice.
Douglas.
You don't really want to hear my story, do you?
Just go. I'm sorry. Cut that shit too. We just cut everything. It's going to be Douglas just... We're going to get the rough edit back, and it's just me like, Douglas, you cut all my stuff.
No, but the doctor is telling us that a woman who's growing a baby in her belly is working harder than somebody who's climbing a mountain. I don't know if you ever heard that or if that was all made up bullshit.
So
but
a woman growing a baby in her belly
is working harder doing nothing, feeling like she's doing nothing, than a person who's climbing a mountain. That they are putting in that much effort. And so I'm going to apply that same mentality to the healing of this ankle I'm dealing with.
No, that's not true. It's not a mountain. That's just something they say. Do you ever?
That's something to say to get you to comply and do what they want.
That's something the woman doctor said. I've already called somebody honey, and now I said woman doctor. Good night, everybody. It's the end of the podcast.
You said you wanted nauseating banter, and you're getting it. So
sure, wide open. I'm jacked on coffee and biscotti, sand.
Yeah.
Scotty, we're good to go. We're rolling right through this, ladies and gentlemen.
So speaking of the whole pregnant lady thing, let's send out a big congratulations to our good friends Amber Marshall and Mike Hayes. They've got Eloise Jean Marshall Hayes is born, and she is a happy baby.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Huge congratulations go out to those guys. I got that text from Mike as well, the little picture of the baby. I love this kind of phase for them where, I mean, it's just the pride and happiness and sleepless nights. So, Yeah, it's tough, but man, is it going to be worth it for those guys? I'm really, really happy for them.
Well, I asked Amber if there's any news I could share about Eloise, and she said something that maybe I couldn't air. So I'll just say she's a good eater. She said she's a bit of a, I don't know, would we say titty monster?
Titty monster. My goodness.
Is that allowed on our podcast to say
on
that?
On our podcast, sure. Absolutely. It's allowed. That's amazing, man.
So she said she's eating good, she's happy, she's chunky, and just after all the years, they are so happy to have her.
Yeah, just a huge congratulations goes out to those guys. We could not be happier for you both.
Absolutely. She's going to have a lot of art fair uncles and aunts out there ready to spoil her rotten. So looking forward to seeing her on the road next year.
I remember having a conversation with some people about like raising a baby on the road with all of the art show artists together. Just like, sometimes it goes home with you, sometimes it goes home with me. Right. And it's just like,
it's the collective
art baby. And we just raise it in our own image to just be our own assistant.
Yeah.
It's starting to sound like slavery. That doesn't sound like great.
Well, speaking of child abuse, I had.
Hey, all right, you got a child abuse segue?
That's a segue. I had collectors back in the day when our kids would be sleeping in the back of the booth, accusing us of giving them a little Benadryl at the shows. So,
right on.
Don't do that. Not good. Not good.
I had I packed a piece of artwork on top of some kids' car seats. I had a couple by and I was loading this piece into their car and I'm like, so you really want me to just slide it into the back? And it just rested on top of the kids' car seats. I was like, I could deliver this if you want. I'm like, nah, I got to get back to my booth. Good luck, Junior. Hope you.
Don't hit the brake too quick.
I could picking the nails out of your teeth.
Oh, well, so it has been kind of a stressful couple of weeks here with the art fair acceptances and rejections that seem to be rolling in. And it'd be helpful to have our art fair therapist available for a quick Zoom call to help talk us down off the ledge.
Yeah, I was thinking about this, Douglas. Yeah. For the show directors that are out there that want to advertise or have their emails read by all of the artists, here's a quick and easy one for you. Figure out when Jay Downey is going to announce for Fort Worth. I got an email from Art and the Pearl while I'm waiting for the announcement for Fort Worth. I was like, oh, Art and the Pearl. Let me say
that's right.
Let me go on and apply to that. That's a great idea. Thank you.
When all eyes are captive on the emails.
Talk about a captive audience. Just everybody's kind of sitting on the edge of their seat.
It's similar to what I've experienced with the Uptown Art Fair for years. We're waiting not just to find out if we're in or we're not in. I mean, that's the first thing that we're on the edge of our seats about. But then it's that getting our booth payment in, because you feel like you have that sweet spot picked out. And I always had that sweet spot on Hennepin that I liked in Uptown Minneapolis. And I felt like if I waited a half an hour after the notifications came, that I might lose that spot.
Yeah, I hear you, Douglas. Some of those shows, it depends on when you pay for what booth you get. And I do feel like this show, I'm kicking myself in the ass for this entire podcast. I feel like all of these doubles and corners and everything, all the plum spots that sell out now, it's because you and I are sitting there talking about it, sitting there kicking myself because everything sells out so damn quickly. I'm like, it's because we sit there and talk about it nonstop.
Dang this podcast. We're not talking anymore. We're just going to air nothing.
Still sitting on my secrets. I'm not going to tell you people where I park. Oh.
So don't ask. Don't ask any more secrets because mum's the word.
No way. I'm telling you where I park.
So it's a tough time of year. For me, for example, I'm in this art fair purgatory. I'm collecting wait lists more than anything. And so I'm just going to sit back and enjoy the ride. We'll see where this takes us.
Aren't you in perpetual wait list anyway? I mean, you're kind of figuring out, maybe that could do you a favor. I found that wait lists this past couple of years since COVID has happened. Yeah. If you're ready, I feel like you can get in off the wait list. A lot of these shows. I almost feel like a wait list these days is, while it feels like a rejection and it feels like purgatory, you yourself are kind of in purgatory anyway. You don't know when you're going to be able to get out and do shows anyway. So,
well, that brings up a good point, because we've talked about in past episodes about how when, let's say, a jury result doesn't go our way, your mind starts spinning. It's like, what happened? What did I do differently? What did my work differently? Did I piss somebody off? And I started to think that way about some of these wait lists. I'm like, is me talking about my ankle on the podcast making some of these early shows thinking, we don't want to give him a spot in case he's not quite ready. So now I'm starting to wonder about this whole project here, starting to wonder what we're doing here.
I don't know that necessarily has anything to do with it. We all are pretty narcissistic, but do we really think that people are actually are oh, this person is so-and-so. And I'm like, to be honest, we're just another application, aren't we?
Exactly. That's where I ended up after my mind has gone 100 million different directions, is not taking it so personally and just realizing we're going to put together a good season. I'm looking forward to building a season like we've talked about, just staying calm and not panicking.
You ever use any of those promoters yourself, as far as like, I always feel like those guys are good for fleshing out a season sometimes.
Like if you've missed, let's say you get a rejection or whatever, and then they might have a rolling
area. Yeah. You're in a certain area and you're like, well, I don't want to go all the way out here for X show and not do something else. And you look at some of these promoters and you're like, well, I'm going to Florida. Let me see if they got any room at the inn over here.
Definitely. Yeah. That's definitely a consideration when, you've talked about the panic apply thing once things start coming through. So it's like you start seeing, well, what applications didn't I miss if I missed my backup or something like that, to try and flesh out a good schedule still. This business is not easy. It's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
No, it's not for the faint of heart, Douglas. I got to say, I'm definitely balder after this past month.
Balder?
Yeah, sure, definitely. Just fistfuls. My wife's like, "Oh, it's application season. Look at the sink. Could you mind rinsing that out, honey?" It's like, Jesus.
So aside from the stress of art show season, the project that you just posted on social media that you've been working on, that seems huge. That was amazing.
It has been huge, and it's been kind of a weird one. It's been all-consuming for the past couple of months, and I've been the anti-Dolan and Allie Marie. I have not been on social media at all, on Instagram and posting images.
Okay.
This particular client, I went through the process of setting up this big commission, but they wanted to be kind of wowed when they walked. This is a second home for them up in Park City. They wanted to walk into the door of their big ski home and be wowed with this piece on their wall. So they didn't want any teasers. They didn't want anything on social. So I've been sitting on this thing for the past couple months.
You're saying they approved the piece you were bringing, but they didn't want to see it in the space until after they walk in and they see it.
So typically a big project like this, I'd be teasing out little like, okay, work in progress. I'm working with gold leaf for the first time. I'm working with this. I'm working on a large scale. It's like a 22-foot piece separated into a triptych. But this is funny for you. And they're not going to listen to this podcast. I know they're not. So
careful.
I've got this guy, right?
Okay.
He is an amazing art installer up there in Park City. And so
sweet.
Remember last year when I went down to Alabama on my way to Artisphere where I got COVID?
Yes.
Went down to Alabama and I got this company to make me these giant panels. Right.
Alabama art panels.
Well, they're out of business because of me, Douglas.
What?
Yeah, they're out of.
Why? Because
one of the panels was warped, and it freaked them out so badly that they made another one, and they were like, "We can't supply people panels if they're going to warp." So they're out of the business, and now they're making tiny homes, and they're much happier.
All right, well, more power to them, but
yeah, I feel bad for them, but they've still got the equipment. Now they're making tiny homes. They got out of it because of me. The first job that they had out of the gate was to build me these 9-foot by 6-foot plus panels. It's just a monster. So anyway, I get these panels. I make the paintings over a period of months. I go for the install. I've got this guy, Dave, who's in Park City. He's super zen, like really calm, unflappable guy. And he builds up his scaffolding. It's going over a stairwell. He gets the first piece on. It's slightly warped. Installs security hardware, which, if you know, security hardware locks 2D work to the wall. So you put it on the bottom, and it's got these brackets. That way, like if you're ever in a hotel and you put your fingers underneath the piece and you try to pull the artwork, it's stuck on the wall. It's like what they use in I don't know, banks and hotels and stuff, keep people from trying to steal the art.
Or having it fall down on them and then getting sued.
Or keep T-Bang from putting up one of his masterpieces. So More on that later, but
yes.
So anyway, these guys, he puts it up, locks the first two to the wall. They look perfect. Puts the third one on the wall. It's like a freaking banana. Like, it is warped.
No.
Well, this is why I feel like a street artist as opposed to like this white glove hoity-toity gallery artist. I'm like, we are street, Douglas. Like, we are. Yeah. It's like, put the motorhead on. We're coming in the door and we're putting it on the wall, however it takes. So I put this thing up on the wall with this guy, and I'm helping him hang it, and they're way too heavy. Like, they're just monstrously heavy. So we've got cleats. Put it on the cleat. This fucking thing is like a banana. It's sticking off the wall so bad. Whoa. And so I'm like, well, can you put an anchor in for the security hardware? And he's like, the post isn't long enough. It's not going to be strong enough. It's going to pull the whole anchor out. And so we're sitting there looking at it, and I'm looking around, and there's nobody but us. The person for the install, the designer is in the other room yapping on the phone, and she's sitting there talking. And I'm like, I look over there, and I'm like, you got any toggle bolts? And he's like, and his eyes kind of get big, and he looks at me. He's like, yeah, fuck yeah, I got some toggle bolts. I was like,
toggle bolt that motherfucker.
Right through the corner of the front of the piece. I was like, you got any wood fill? And he's like, yeah, I got wood fill. So we did it. I mean, that thing was up and on the wall and straight, and the banana thing was cured in like 30 seconds. Smear some wood fill. He
MacGyvered the hell out of that thing, right?
Oh, yeah, just anchored that thing. Smeared some wood fill on, got the paint out of my truck. Painted the top of the thing. I was like, looks like the horsey's standing on another dirt cloud. And it's just, we're done, dude. Just rock and roll. Just be done.
Sound like a glass blower after that. That's kind of how glass blowers do things too.
If you could put a screw through the front of your glass on the install, I'm impressed.
Well, I'm talking more like you have to MacGyver stuff. You have to be, you have to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, that's what this was. What I'm gonna cry and be like, oh, sorry, I'm gonna have to remake the other panel. You're not gonna have it for Thanksgiving. Like, no way. I'll put a screw through that horse's eye if I have to. Just make it work.
That's awesome, man. Well, that's great. I can't wait to see you lay it out over the next week, and see how it all unfolds.
Thanks. Yeah, the whole project is done, but I'm teasing it out on Instagram day at a time, kind of showing how I do the process of a commission. What I'm kind of thinking too is part of my social media game, trying to up that a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be like, okay, well, this is how I do a commission. And I do a lot of commission work, and I do a lot of complaining about commission work, but show people what it's like. I've got a little sketch that I photoshopped onto their wall of their space that was being built, and to see that start to finish as it kind of unfolds, and to see how I pitch a commission to clients is, I think, going to be pretty interesting for future clients as well as past people. So check me out at Will Armstrong Art on Instagram. It's just all one word like that. So check me out there.
Yeah, I've been also working on that whole thing too, because at first the social media thing felt like it was a lot of our artist friends kind of like supporting each other and saying, way to go, it looks great or whatever. But really the focus on these bigger projects are so when we have collectors who come to a show or see us, they can go on there and they can now see this isn't something that's in your booth. It's something that we could commission and you could walk us through it. And having a step-by-step of a process, even though a collector isn't going to do a carbon copy of what you did, but they know if they like your design, they know how you're going to get them to the end result by going through the process. It's really cool.
Yeah, and I try to give, with my commission stuff, I try to give people, this is so that I don't hate it as much in the future, but I'm like, okay, here's the proposal. I have a very set proposal, and then they can leave me the fuck alone is basically my goal. It's like, just leave me alone. Let me work. I don't like to show a lot of work in progress between you and me and the entire listening audience. The reason I don't show people a lot of the process because I'm not working on it constantly, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm working on it start to finish, and like, look, you have to wait for a year. But that's just so I'm scheduling it. It's like the year goes by, I'm going to knock it out in 2 or 3 days. So if you commission it in May, don't contact me in June. Be like, how's it coming along? I'm like, it's not, I'm like, so I try to shut the door on that. It's kind of like with jewelry too, because I've got an in-house jeweler too, where jewelers, it's like, well, I don't want to send you a picture of the bezel that I haven't cleaned up. Because you're going to be like, well, why does it look like that? Why is there junk on the edge of it? And I'm like, well, I haven't cleaned the burrs off this, and I haven't done this. And
exactly. You don't want to give the collector something that they have to interpret and figure out what it's going to look like when it's finished. So the midway process, it looks not done yet. So then it's only going to be reasons to give hesitation and to feel angst and anxiety and to want to back off from the project. So
Also, Doug, the midway process for me is usually 3 days before I ship. It's like,
but I mean, don't discount that in the fact that there's a lot going on up in the brain as to how you're going to tackle it and
100%.
how you're going to visualize it. And then once that's all lined up, the actual doing part goes pretty quickly.
Right.
Am I right?
Yeah, you're totally right. And I do, I'll do a collage first. I do, people who don't know my work, I draw and paint on top of collage. And a lot of times I'll come up with a new idea and I'll do the collage first. And I'll have that collage sometimes for up to a year or even 2 for a new idea where I'm looking at it. And don't discount the fact that the planning is part of the creation.
No, we're not mechanics.
I mean, that planning and that's what you're charging people for too. It's not necessarily, it's not just time spent ink in hand. It's times or brush or pen or whatever in hand.
Right.
It's what is actually, the thought process.
What's going on, thought and creatively, all of that, and the sequence. So, hang tight. We'll be right back.
This episode of the Independent Artist Podcast is brought to you by Zap, the digital application service where artists and art festivals connect.
Hey, Will, do you remember the old way of doing these applications with red dots on the slides and self-addressed stamped envelopes?
Do you still have a rotary phone, Douglas? No, I don't remember that.
Well, I just like that they were with us back then when we made the switch from analog to digital.
It's a huge switch, and now Zap is the industry standard.
And they're always creating features that make our lives easier, too. So I do like what Zap does, and I do like that most of the shows I apply to are on Zapplication.
Exactly. So I personally appreciate what Zap is doing, and thanks for not making us reinvent the wheel every single week like we used to have to do. So I was talking a little bit earlier, Douglas, about my early jobs and working Olive Garden and learning how to bartend. And I worked there for a couple of years, and I would work at different bars and things like that. I loved bartending, and I always feel like that taught me how to talk to people. That's what got me to where I am as far as like learning how to sell people things that they already want. People come to the bar that they're getting a drink anyway, so it's really you don't have to really upsell them or do anything. That was my kind of early on experience as far as learning how to talk to people. What was yours?
Same kind of deal. I was in hospitality. I was a little further up the food chain in fine dining, but it's kind of the same thing. I learned how to talk to people who had money to burn, who would say spend $300 on a bottle of wine. I mean, someone who I felt was just so above my level.
Right.
I learned a lot from one of the servers there who described herself as a lifer. She's a good friend. Her name is Barb Backlund. And she basically told me that I just needed to get out of my own way, that these people, they showed up to the restaurant. They're already halfway there. They want what we're selling. And I don't need to be worried about trying to convince them of anything, that, if they don't like something, it's just lunch. It's just dinner. They'll come back and they'll have another meal another day and not take it all so seriously.
Okay. Yeah. Where did you do that?
It was W.A. Frost in St. Paul, right by the cathedral there. W.A. Frost is a great place. I love that place. But man, it was like baptism by fire. I mean, it's like this intensity of pace, and yet the high-class clientele that we're working with. It was the perfect footing before stepping into this fine art business that I
that's funny, because I feel like I learned a lot. I parlayed into a little fine, or actually I did a little fine dining beforehand.
Okay.
And then I was working for, this is funny, I live in Santa Fe, but I bartended at a restaurant in Richmond, Virginia called Santa Fe.
Weird.
So funny little story about Santa Fe, too, is Vince Gilligan, the writer and director for Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul.
Yes.
He used to hang out there, and he hung out in our place called Santa Fe, and then there was a sister restaurant up the street called Davis and Maine. And for anybody who's into Vince Gilligan's stuff, the law office,
Better Call Saul.
Yep, exactly. He calls it Davis and Maine is the name of the firm. So
I'm getting actually shivers. Those are two of my favorite series. And I watched Breaking Bad back when it came out originally. And then I have successfully gone through Better Call Saul twice now, and then went back to watch Breaking Bad. So even just by you mentioning Davis and Maine, I'm like, I know that. I know that.
So yeah, he used to hang out at Davis and Maine, and then he'd come back in Santa Fe. And so that was a little nod to his upbringing. And Richmond, Virginia, is that he put Davis and Maine in Santa Fe as far as the show goes. So, and of course, he was hanging out in there while I was bartending. Do I remember him? No. Not at all. He was hanging out at the bar. Don't remember him at all. I'm sure I talked to him and served him drinks, but never really.
It was kind of like you found out about it later and.
Well, yeah. I mean, also I was 22, and in the bar that I served in, the ballerinas from Richmond Ballet would hang out. So I was kind of like.
He wasn't Vince Gilligan then. I mean, he was Vince Gilligan, but who knew what he'd go on to make?
Or weirdo at the bar with a book,
Yeah, there you go. I gotcha. Where was your attention?
Yeah, exactly. I was 22. What am I going to do?
Yes, I understand. I understand how that works.
Exactly. So yeah, it was. But like I did that, and then the old cook that was there, they hired him to do head chef over at some kind of upscale hotel. And he was like, everybody's stealing from me. Can you come run my bar for a while? So I did that over at the hotel and learned some of that stuff. But it's all how we learn hospitality, right? It's how we learn to talk to different walks of life.
Absolutely. Every experience we've had, it seems like it plays an important role into what our present and our future is. I mean, I say that a lot on the podcast, but it's how I feel. And I just get super excited when I'm doing something and all of a sudden I'm like, wait a minute, this is like a circle back from this time in my life or that time in my life. And I'm like, oh, why did I do that? Oh, here it comes around again. So I just love it. It's just so cool.
Yeah. I also learned, like, I don't want to hard sell people anything. Like, if you want what I have, then I can talk to you about it and tell you the story behind it. But I actually sold encyclopedias for a summer.
Shut up.
Dude, oh, yeah, for like 3 months.
Oh, my God.
They wouldn't even let you say I'm selling encyclopedias. I'm placing educational systems.
Oh.
And it was just terrible business. And their business model, which was go into poor communities, and if you can get in the door, then you can sell them the piece, because in order to get you out of the door, the people have to admit that they don't want to educate their kids. Like, that's how you, like, so you don't want to educate. And it's subtler than that, but it's like that. So I learned that I didn't want to do that. And they were giving you like a low grade kind of paycheck, kind of like they pay you $2 an hour to bartend or whatever, because you're getting all your money in tips. So they're giving you a low grade paycheck because they have to. And then it's commission based.
Yeah.
And I learned really quickly that I did not want to do it, but they would take you out on these big trips and you're stuck out there on this big trip. Like, we're going to take you to Florida and you're out on this big road trip. And I mean, it was just a nightmare situation. Sometimes you're sleeping in this van or the station wagon because there were 2 cars that were taking you out there.
For selling the encyclopedias?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And you're on this road trip and you're going to these poor communities. And I remember being in Georgia, and the guy that ran our little group, his name was Todd Day. And he was like, I'm Todd Day. What are we going to do today, Todd Day? It was just so freaking cheesy. And so I would go find a place to hang out. Like, they'd drop you off into this neighborhood, and I'd find a place to hang out until they'd come pick me back up, and I'd go home, and I'm like, I didn't learn anything. And I just sat there, and I would like hang out. And like, I just remember like someplace in Georgia near a military base.
Yeah.
And hanging out with these Navy SEAL guys. They were like, what are you doing? And I thought I was going to get my ass kicked. And they're like, and I told them exactly. I'm like, oh, I'm supposed to be selling encyclopedias, but it's a cheesy business, and I'm just waiting for them to take me home because I'm on a road trip. I'm not going to get back till next week.
Right. Yeah. I'm waiting on my ride here.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, well, you want to hang out with us? I'm like, yeah. So I just went back to their place, and we had a barbecue and drank a bunch of beer.
That's a good point you made about using fear as a selling tactic or whatever, because I learned that from my dad. He was in the insurance business.
Okay.
And so their main tactic is to get into people's homes and have somebody feel guilt about the fact that they don't want to spend money on life insurance, because if you die, what's that going to do to your wife? Can you live with yourself? I mean, so, they really pull at the heartstrings there. And then he saw the downside having a career in that and the emotional toll it takes on you. So he told me, don't ever do the hard sell. If they don't love it, if you sell at all costs, you have a stink on you that you just can't really deal with or live with.
Right.
So I get what you're saying about the encyclopedia thing.
Well, I mean, and I do know, I know some artists that kind of do the hard sell. If you walk into my booth and I'm selling you something.
Yes.
Yeah, my main selling technique is to just be open and likable and try to be open to what they're interested in learning. And a lot of times I'll be like, please let me know if you have any questions, and just welcome them. And just kind of, and then if I see kind of like they're not going to ask me any, typically nobody ever really asks you any questions. So I'm kind of like, I just kind of tell them my story, or I'll just leave it open, or I'll kind of like, well, each one of my pieces tells a story. So if you'd like to hear one, let me know which one is your favorite. Is kind of as far as I
love
go.
That. That's real inviting.
Yeah.
Then they can feel like they can ask, but they're not being pressured to do that. That, let me know if I can answer any questions. And it's just all like, okay.
Well, who the hell doesn't want to hear a good story, right?
Yeah.
So leave it open and be like, hey, I'm a storyteller and I've got one about each one of these pieces. And be like, well, what's the story behind this? Or I don't know. We talked about this too. I use kids all the time because kids are they really want to hear a story, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I'll just kind of get into it with a kid and talk to them about my work, and then the other people that way the other folks who are actually interested can be like, oh, that's cool. Plus, you're not a dick to kids, and how is that not likable?
That's super likable. That is like
Don't be a dick to kids.
Nope, don't do that.
How about just don't be a dick?
Don't
period.
be a dick. In any regards for that matter.
Right. Hey, speaking of dick.
Okay, let's hear it.
I'm really done. I'm done with Facebook, and I deleted it off my phone. I'm really tired of it.
Yeah.
And,
Why? What's up with that? Why are you done with it?
It's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
It's just like it's people in their little pockets complaining about politics to the people that already are opinionated.
Sure.
It's like they're not complaining to anybody that's listening. They're like, you've got to watch this documentary about how bad Trump is. And it's like, look, I already hate him. Why do I have to watch another video? I'm going to hate him more. My hate is already in the red.
Yeah.
I already know how I feel.
It's not going to change your mind on it. Like, let's say somebody wanted to convince you he's like the Pope. Would they ever be able to convince you of that? No. So what's the point?
Yeah. Right, exactly. Oh, he's actually a good Christian man. He's just flawed like the rest of us. F off. I don't care. Take your opinion and go into your own little pocket bubble. You're not convincing me. I'm not convincing you. So anyway, I'm just really tired. It's like, it's not fun anymore. And nobody really has observations that are fun anymore. It's like, it's complaining about politics. It's your birthday. It's whatever. The only good thing about it is the birthday. But like, honestly, like how many of those birthday greetings do you get that are any more than just happy birthday, HBD? Like, thanks. I like the HBDs because I just respond TY.
No, but you're right. The personal connection thing is lacking. When we first started in on it, it was about extending out our friendships across a digital platform.
Sure.
And now it's really just a marketing machine that will feed us a diet of our hate and fear,
Yeah.
So it's like,
and
what
I mean,
is the use?
like when I thought it was fun, it's like, I thought it was great for what we all do for a living, because our friends across the country, I might not see Anthony Hansen for 6 months, but I know what he's up to. But he didn't really post anymore. You don't really post anything more than just selling.
Yeah.
And I talk to you every other week. What the hell do I need to know what you're doing? Talk to you. I joked about this with you before. Like, you talk to a lot of folks on the phone, and
no, I don't.
You don't?
Mm-mm.
You're always telling me who you talk to.
Oh, well, maybe what's confusing is I use the word talk to in reference to, I sound like my parents.
You do?
It's for messaging.
Okay. But I guess my whole point is like, I don't talk to anybody. Like, I just don't, like, I was saying, like, here's who I talk to on my phone. My wife, number one, my mom, check in with mom. And dad. My dad, this is funny about the Armstrongs. My dad is a lurker.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I'll call, they're old school. They've got the landlines.
Sure.
And they'll pick up and I'll be talking to my mom I'm like, well, did dad ever get the weed whacker fixed? And she'll go, well, he's on the phone, Bill. And he'll be like, oh yeah, I got it fixed.
He's been lurking all along.
He's already there. He's lurking. He just doesn't say a word. It's really weird.
Well, my social media posts, my parents aren't on social media, but I have like aunts and uncles who are. So then you extend out the whole telephone game where it's like you post something, their siblings come back to them. Well, I heard Douglas is doing this. I heard this is happening with Douglas. And so suddenly then it's like, well, why didn't you tell me that this was happening? I'm like, well, why aren't you on social media?
Right. Well, that's the thing. I'd be fine not knowing a lot of different stuff, but I just, you go down the list. It's like, who do I even talk to? Like with my voice, it's like my wife, my mom, you, actually, maybe you before my mom. I think I probably talk to you more than I talk to my mom. And then my kids. It's like, I don't talk to very many people. It's just not, it just doesn't happen.
Well, it's kind of funny. We brought this up recently. We were talking about how we do have this kind of unique friendship in that we record 95% of what we say to each other.
It's true. And then the other 5% is stuff where my mic didn't work or the other stuff. It just doesn't, we talked on the phone yesterday regarding the podcast, and we had, we kind of trying to hash out this week's episode because we had a couple that's supposed to be on next week that got sick. They got COVID. So Trey and Helene, please get better. And,
that sucks. That's awful to be out at a show and come home with COVID. I mean, that's been the story of this year for people, isn't it?
Yeah, it's happened. Well, go out to a show and get COVID on the way. Yeah. That's fun.
That's not
don't
fun.
Do that.
Not fun.
Now, didn't you get COVID from a show? Didn't you come back?
I was at Ann Arbor this year, and I was face to face with another artist who didn't come back to the show the next day because he was in his hotel room realizing he had COVID, and we were like right there. And I felt a little sick, but I never tested with COVID and never got sick. So no, I
never
avoided
got the
it.
full. That's funny. There was some artists at in Denver, Cherry Creek, this past summer that were walking around with COVID, talking people face to face and not wearing masks and stuff. And I'm like, that made me feel punchy.
Yeah.
Not punchy funny. Punchy, punch.
Punchy, like actual punch, like punchy, physical punch.
Action punch.
Well, moving forward here, now that COVID is in our everyday lives and is real, is it just going to be like the flu? Are people going to get COVID and be like, I'm still going to go to work. I'm still going to the show. I'm still doing this because we've got vaccines that keep us from dying. I mean, is it just going to be like another cold?
That's my suspicion. Yeah, I think it already is that way.
Yeah.
My kid got COVID and we did the right thing, and she missed like literally the funnest week of the year. Like they just finished reading The Outsiders, and they were going to dress up in leather and watch the movie.
Oh my
and
God.
then she's in honors orchestra, and she missed the honors orchestra trip and all the stuff. It was just the biggest bummer. She was just like, I don't know. I haven't heard my child. Honestly, I cannot think of a time where I've heard my child sobbing before. Just like uncontrollable like hiccuping sobbing.
Yeah.
Just awful.
I mean, it's for one, in this day and age with kids in school, it can be a pretty rough experience. And for them to feel excited about something and then to not be able to participate in it, it's got to be like, it's so rough. I mean, I remember what our kids went through at that age.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. My wife was texting me earlier about different topics that we could talk to, just about being art show parents and how do you think that affects your kids' career path? Like, do you think that affects them at all?
This is kind of interesting. I've shared on the podcast before that Oliver, my son, has helped us kind of at the beginning of this all kind of launching with the audio engineering type stuff for the podcast. He hasn't been doing it for a while because college was more important, and I told him he needed to focus on his future and his career. So he's been working on that, but he's going through right now a kind of a shift where we all have been there, where we think we're going one direction and then you kind of have to pivot. And he's pivoting. And I feel like this business has set him up for seeing mom and dad have to pivot. Right. And I feel like that has built a lot of character and making hard decisions and having faith that taking a new lane isn't going to result in a bad situation, that he has confidence in that. So I think that's cool. I think that's really cool.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I've been setting up, my wife has been doing these weekly shows over at this like a one day, or it's barely even, it's like a half day farmers market show like I've been talking about. And to go over there and realize to be somebody's plus one at these shows, And to do it the way we do it, and we're really good at what we do. Like, I know how to do an art show. If you just, like when Brad and Sunday helped me set up my show when I blew my Achilles out,
right?
They came in and just set it up. And we're like, well, we know how to work pro panels. We don't have a craft out. We've got a trim line, but we know how to set this thing up. So we'll figure it out in like 4 seconds. Like, we just know how to do it from years and years of experience. And I feel like my kids have that. They know how to do art shows. I have no doubt that my 12-year-old could figure out something to sell, show up at an art show and sell it, do it and break it down. Like, they already have the skill set. Just they're like, oh, we know how to do it. Do they want to do it? No, they're already over it.
Yeah, right.
But if they had to, like, they could just like, it's kind of funny to have this career that we have, that, and for them to have the knowledge that they have to parlay into something else. And that's kind of what the show has been about. Totally. Like, talking about like learning how to do these tasks that we take from bartending and talking to people who just want to drink Miller Lights to fine dining and all of the different little skills that we pick up along the way.
You know, when you say that about your kids being able to just jump in and know how to like help, my daughter, she kind of runs her energy almost parallel to how I do.
Oh, God.
So when she was...
Poor thing,
I know. But she, you know, in her middle school days, and she'd come to a show sometimes, you know, Renee would have to stay home, and Eva would be my assistant at the shows. And literally, she could read my mind. I'd be like, hand me that, and boom, it's right there. Hand me that, boom. And you put the puzzle pieces together in the van, and she just knew it almost even faster, and like she could read my mind even more than Renee could. And so Renee would used to joke, she'd say, okay, Eva's going to be my replacement.
Yeah. That's funny, man. Is she going to be? Like, I wonder is she interested in helping out to do shows when would she go on the road with you guys?
Well, she's 25 and she's got her career now. So no, she won't. Good. She won't be free for any of that.
Yeah.
But I think
what does she do for a living?
She is working as a psychotherapist, and she manages cases for kids who have been severely abused or hard to parent. Maybe they've been thrown out of their homes and they live in a residence home. So it deals with a lot of trauma and helps to get them services that they need and manages their overall cases. So she has a really hard, stressful job, and I'm really proud of what she's done for herself in her life.
Yeah, that's big work. Big, important work. Today I drew a picture of a guy.
Honestly, back to politics from earlier, that is why I am a Democrat, because of what my daughter does. That whole thing. Everyone does not have equal footing. And I applaud people like her that helps people, provide services for people so that they can get what they need. Because a lot of these kids, they don't have a fighting chance.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too political, because it's like we do have listeners on both sides of the aisle, I guess. But it's interesting. I was raised by a conservative family, and the family that actually I'd never met. Like, I went to this private school, this hoity-toity kind of private school, which was the brother school of where my father worked. So I went down the road from where he worked, and it's a pinky out kind of establishment. Sure. And it is, it's a fantastic prep school, but I didn't even think I knew any Democrats growing up. It's like I was raised by these conservative folks and old school kind of Nixon Republicans. My dad hates the current Republican Party and what it has become, but he's still a Republican guy. But I was raised being able to talk to both sides of people, and I think that's
I don't even remember that there being the differences between parties when I was a kid. I don't remember.
Well, you didn't find it out, right?
Right. It wasn't something that was broadcast so obviously like it is now.
Right.
But yeah. Anyway, go on with your story. I didn't mean it.
The family that I met, I remember we had this little. We had a little mock election for our school, and it was, it ages us again, but we've talked about that plenty, but it was Carter versus Reagan.
I remember those days,
Yeah, we had this big mock election, and I think Reagan won like 58-2. You know,
Yes.
60 people in our class. And I remember joking with my buddy at lunch, and I'm like, well, who the hell voted for Carter?
Right.
And he's like, well, one of them was me. You know, we're Democrats. And he was just proud about being a Democrat. I'm like, I don't think I ever met him. But
Yeah.
his family is what kind of pushed me in that direction of my hippy-dippy ways.
Okay.
But I just grew up wanting to be one of those folks. My best friend and his family. He just lost his mother last week, and I know he doesn't listen, but cheers to Mrs. Parrott. She was an integral part in my raising.
Wow. Yeah, that's really meaningful. I mean, I read what you shared about her and how important she was to you. That is touching. That's a really, to have people to open your eyes like that and to kind of help steer your path a bit.
Sure.
So you're getting ready for another big show coming up. I'm done with shows for quite a while, but you're getting stuff all lined up for one.
Yeah,
right?
I got I do love the One of Kind show in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
It's always worked for me, and I don't suggest it for everyone. And it's odd that I make it work, but I will get out there and see some good friends that I've seen on the road for a long time. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing her name, but it'll be great to see Marina Terraud out there. She's close by. I'll see Greg Turco. He's my next door neighbor. Just always look forward to seeing Turco and Michael Schwegman around the corner. And
that sounds like old home week.
It is, man. I love that show, and I love those folks, and I love my little neighborhood. It's you set up a gallery, and I've got my walls painted a certain color. I've got bright red walls on two of the walls, and I've got a new body of work that I'm gonna show there too. So I'm excited to see how that goes over. And
awesome.
Yeah, it just seems like, I don't know, you get these schedule marks in your year that make it feel like this always feels like the end of the year to me. Like I get into Chicago and it's winter, you know, and it's cold, and you put your winter coat on, and
the smell of the chocolate factory walking over the bridge.
That's my favorite part. Like there's a chocolate factory in downtown Chicago that's just working overtime this time of year, and it's just pumping. You know, you've got your winter coat on, you're all bundled up, and it smells like warm chocolate. Which the funny thing is, like smelling or breathing deep in a big city, you're like,
you don't know what you're gonna get.
It's like, oh, it smells like really good Italian food, and it's like somebody vomited. Like that's just you're just smelling like you just stepped in somebody's barf and you're walking across the Wacker Bridge. It's just, I mean, it can be a nightmare in a city, but this time of year is it's beautiful, and the lights are out, so it feels like the holidays to me. And again, I'm an open book as far as how I feel about different shows and what they work for people, but that one, you can ask me off the record and I'll tell you.
Yeah, there is a bit of a romance that happens with certain events every year. Like you said, these milestones. And I know we felt that way about One of a Kind a lot, because you've got the holidays and you've got the end of the year, and all of that stuff just feels so sweet, you know? Yeah. And I know when we had to walk away from it, because it didn't end up working out for us after a couple, towards the end a couple of times. And it was hard to let go of the other side of it, that the other good memories that come in. And that happens to, I'm sure, a lot of people with certain shows where we keep doing it because of the feel goods. Right. We let the financial thing go for a while until it's like, okay, no, this really isn't working. I have to let go of the feel goods.
Yeah, or even, Douglas, like the heartbreak of not getting into a certain show that you've counted on for a number of years, and all of a sudden you get the rejection, and you're like, oh my God, it's almost this thing of like, I've done that show for 12 years and I just got rejected. What just happened? And it's almost this thing of like, it really is the stages of grief too. Like the rejection, where like when you get pissed off, and except, the funny thing about it is like you get the stages of grief usually start with mourning and sadness. And then you get to anger, but I tend to start with anger. I don't know how
Actually, that's not true. They can come in any freaking order. But you can access the anger one real quick, you're saying, huh?
Yeah, it is that. I mean, not necessarily, but it's like it's loss too.
It is loss.
It's like you let a show go, and it like becomes part of your schedule. It's like, I mean, I remember in the early stages of winter, and you start looking forward to going down, when I lived on the East Coast, going down to Miami and doing Coconut Grove. And, I really miss that as far as being so far away and just being like, can't rationalize Florida from living in the Southwest now and
Right.
having kids and doing all this stuff. So I can't necessarily wrap my head around of getting to Florida now. But God, cutting the sunshine and around February, that was there's a sense of mourning and loss as far as that goes too. It just feels weird, but it's just the way it is.
This might be the first time I'm not even in Florida this year. I don't know, what's going to happen there. And I remember my first time starting a Florida season. Before I went to Florida, I did wholesale season. So like my art shows would end in like August or whatever, but then I would do the big buyer's market show to try and sell to galleries over the holidays and then stay home for the winter and make work for the galleries and have all the orders filled by spring and then hit the roadshow circuit again. And so once that was going soft for me and I had to reinvent my business model, that's when Florida entered the picture.
Yeah.
So that has been a constant now, and I have done it for 15 years or something.
Okay.
And thinking of this year having to make an adjustment, I might be there, might not be, but not with the kind of presence we've had in the past.
Right. Well, you're going to have to make an adjustment just mentally too. Getting out from the upper Midwest and the frigid thing. I'm like, what's that going to do to you psychologically to not go out and see the palm trees and get down to Miami and Fort Myers and Tampa and all these places? It's like we had to cancel our, woe is me, but we're mourning the loss of Sanibel because we were planning a big spring break trip with the kids, and Sanibel's decimated. It looks like chewed food. It looks like Sanibel, honestly, it doesn't look like chewed food. It looks like you ran over a pine cone with your lawnmower and kicked it out the other side. It just is a nightmare right now. And that's
what Oliver said in last week's episode. He talked about how it was like you put the palm trees in a food processor down there.
Yeah.
It's just
decimated.
Yeah.
So hearts go out to the people down there. They keep getting hit with storms, and it's not going to stop anytime soon.
There was the 1-2 punch, and so
anyway,
extreme climate. Yeah.
Woe is us. We don't get to see the palm trees. You're my personal choice, and your footy, your little foot, your poor baby foot. So what the fuck that was?
I don't either.
All right, brother. I think we've got enough for a show. Do you think we got enough?
I think we do. I think we nailed it. Before we go, let's send out our well wishes to Trey and Helene. Hope you guys are feeling better. It was really nice to get to meet you yesterday and get you all set up for the recording today. But no worries. Once you're feeling better, you got that all set up, and you'll be able to jump back on, and we'll get their talk next time. But we just had a real good conversation. It was really touching to find out some of the reactions to the show, and I really appreciate hearing from people about what it means to them.
That is what I think is one of the more valuable things that people have told me about this, is that they feel like they're not alone out there.
Totally.
You're not. You're not reinventing the wheel.
Yeah.
You feel like you are every time that you hammer out a corner in your craft hut and take it back down off of a stop sign that it's wrapped around in the 40-mile-per-hour winds that gust it up. But you're not alone. You're not the first person that's done it. And you won't be the last. We've got new people coming along all the time, too.
This is a thriving industry, and there's a lot of incredible people out there. And being able to showcase their stories has been really exciting.
It has been, and sitting here yapping with you about it has been fun and rewarding for me too. Sometimes,
sometimes.
No, we wouldn't have done this show just the two of us yapping together back and forth if it hadn't been for engagement on social media. And I know it'll be great for some listeners, and some listeners will be like, I only like the interviews. I mean, fast forward it like Dylan Straczynski.
Okay, well,
fast forward to the interviews.
This is not a show for Dylan this week.
No, not this week.
This week.
So thanks again. If you guys have questions or want us to address certain points, we're always open to it and are super interested in what you say. You can do it on our social media page on Facebook or on Instagram. Just comment on some of those things and let us know what you like and don't like. And leave us a review, by the way. We've kind of dried up on some of those reviews. Those really help us get more listeners out there. So that really helps us out on any of those media platforms. If you like what we're doing, please leave us a review. Drop us a 5-star over there on Apple or
even more than just the stars. We love the stars. Please do the 5 stars. But even just a review with words, it's amazing how much Apple takes those into heart. And then they start circulating you into their rotation so that people will see, oh, there's a podcast about art show artists out there. And
right.
It will
use your words.
Use your words. So, and there's one other announcement. I've been working on the YouTube channel, so you can now stream the Independent Artist Podcast on YouTube. So find our channel there, hit subscribe. And it's not going to be a video podcast. It's still just audio only, but we will have a tile with the guests' images of their work. We'll still have the promotional videos on there. So it just offers more options for you, to find out more about us and about our guests on the video channel. So check out YouTube. Well, everyone, happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for tuning in this week. We hope everyone has a great time with family or friends or whoever you call family.
Yeah, don't talk about politics or religion and abortion or do. I don't know. Start it, mix it up. Let us know how it goes, but have a great Thanksgiving.
Thanks, everyone, and happy Thanksgiving, Will.
Happy Thanksgiving to you too, buddy. I appreciate you, and good luck getting this thing all whittled down into a tight, Oscar-worthy performance.
It'll be right and tight.
All right.
Bye now.
This podcast is brought to you by the National Association of Independent Artists. The website is naiaartists.org.
Also sponsored by Zapplication. That's zapplication.org. And while you're at it, check out Will's website at willarmstrongart.com and my website at sigworthglass.com.
Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to be notified when we release new episodes.